The agenda this week heard from 4 university presidents who are helping Toronto rise to its city-building challenges. We heard how women politicians in rural Ontario make a difference, recalled Canada's voice at war, and debriefed the latest troubles facing the EU. The agenda's Week in Review begins with what Canada needs to know before it legalizes pot.
I never expected to see a Pandora's box of evil once we legalize. I mean, I've been campaigning and advocating for legalization for 30 years. So I'm just happy that it's actually occurred. The actual results of the American experiment, you're only going to know after 5 to 10 years. You really can't speculate now. But we're not seeing the adverse impact that some prohibitionists said we would have. And quite frankly, it's all been about commerciality, as Benedict said. All the studies I see are about how much money can be made. And I deal with a lot of licensed producers here in Canada, and a lot of people with dollar signs in their eyes. And that's what they've been focusing on. The tax revenue, is it successful in raising revenue? The public health issues have been somewhat clouded because you really don't know. You need some longitudinal studies and see what will happen into the future. But I don't expect to see people being that concerned about the Pandora's box of evil. I think it will fade into the background.
What does commercialization look like here in the province of Ontario?
I'm not sure, but I do want to give you a statistic from Forbes, because you got to hear this. This is how mainstream marijuana is. I used to think it was subversive, the activities that I was engaged in and the advocacy. Legal marijuana sales were $3.4 billion in the United States, outselling Dasani, Girl Scout cookies, and Oreo.
This is over what period of time?
This is in 2015.
In 2015.
So that's how mainstream it's become. In terms of tax revenues, it's unclear, but I think Colorado did pretty well last year. They were close to $1 billion in tax revenue. Commercialization in Ontario is unclear what form it would take, but you do know we have a medical program with a bunch of companies licensed to produce, and it strikes me that the path of least resistance is simply to piggyback on that. And then the question becomes, will it be sold in the LCBO, will it be sold in storefronts, or will it be mail order like the medical program is? And my suspicion is the Canadian way is to do stuff very quietly and discreetly. I don't see storefronts happening, even though I don't know if you can stop them from happening.
Benedict, in your view, the additional revenues for government, how big a role should that be in our deciding how to move this forward?
First of all, again, we should not make the tax revenue the driver of what we're going to do. I mean, obviously, we want taxation also because it's a proven tool to control the price, which again is an important mechanisms, to control access and availability. But definitely, whatever form the tax revenue will take, we want to make sure that as part of a public health approach, at least a designated amount of those monies goes back into the kinds of things that are needed to further the public health agenda. That means developing and delivering proper education. We definitely need to diversify and adapt what is available for treatment, because we do have and will have people who need help with cannabis-related problems, undoubtedly. And we need a number of other interventions that are protecting the public health, and this is where at least part of the designated or the tax revenues should definitely go, and not just into the public coffers. We don't want to make this another legalized gambling experiment that was primarily driven by fiscal considerations at the time.
Rebecca, you heard Bob Young describe it not exactly as the Wild West. There's a lot of caveats in place to make sure that it stays somewhat regulated. Is that okay for you if that were to come to Ontario?
I think we do need to put a few more caveats in place.
Like what?
If I could actually backtrack a little bit, I'd like to build on what Benedict was mentioning in regards to the revenues. One thing that we can pull from both Colorado and Washington is the importance of proactively investing. So it's not just a matter of looking at how do we target the revenues that we make once we do legalize and start generating money. It's recognizing that the most important time to make a difference in terms of education and prevention is now, when we're thinking about putting things in place and when we're leading up to that model, to make sure that we're getting accurate messaging out there and setting up the frameworks that we're going to need in terms of administration, prevention, education, and treatment, so that we're ready when we actually do come to regulatory change.
On the issue, as Alan said, presumably we're going to do this very modestly in Ontario, as we do all things. Storefronts, LCBO, who can control it? Drugstores. I see Shoppers Drug Mart wants into this. What does commercialization look like to you?
I think that we'd be treading in dangerous ground if we got to something like Shoppers Drug Mart distributing. LCBO would be more similar to the Washington model, where their Washington Liquor Control Board is now the Washington Liquor and Cannabis Board. because they've taken that on. One thing that we would want to dissuade, though, is selling alcohol and marijuana out of the same storefront.
What's wrong with that?
A really good example is driving impairment. So one of the public health concerns that we want to be aware of is driving while impaired, because we know that cannabis impairs your ability to drive, and that alcohol and cannabis have an additive effect. So when it comes to impairment, it's not 1 + 1 = 2, it's 1 + 1 = 3 in terms of your ability to drive safely.
So you're saying that you ought not to be selling cannabis out of, if the LCBO takes it over, you ought not to be able to sell alcohol and cannabis in the same location?
That's correct.
You'd want a separate place set up.
That's correct.
Alan, what do you think of that idea?
I think you can overthink this. I mean, I don't think you want to demonize marijuana. If it's that bad, I don't think we should be legalizing. And I think it's important to understand, too, that after you legalize, there will be a blip of increased use of curiosity. But I predict our consumption rates will really go lower and lower each and every year as the forbidden fruit syndrome is removed. I actually see young people using it less and less as a result. So I'm not as concerned about storefront LCBO. I think we'll settle into a pattern that will be acceptable to all. I think one of the reasons marijuana is the most popular drug is partly because it is illegal, and we're going to take a little bit of that away, quite frankly. And that's why I was mentioning it's become so mainstream.
Loses its illegal
Well, it isn't part of
cachet.
the identity construction of a young person anymore. I don't know what they'll turn to, but I don't see it being a problem into the future, though I do admit over the next 5 years or so, we may see an increase of adverse effects as more people are just trying and seeing whether they can use it.
Doug mentioned an expression a few moments back, the end of Schengen. And we do, I suspect some of our viewers are not going to know what that reference is, so we're going to take a moment here, we're going to put a map up, and we're just going to explain what the Schengen zone is, because there have been some border controls established in Europe among some countries as a result of the refugee crisis and the terror attacks, and that was not supposed to happen. The so-called Schengen zone is an area where people were supposed to be able to travel freely, no passports required, 26 countries in total. It's named after that little town in Luxembourg where the agreement was signed. In January, Austria imposed full border control measures on anyone entering its country. France has reinstated tighter border controls after the Paris attacks. Belgium has done likewise. Germany, Denmark, Sweden, they have all introduced border controls as well. And Megan, one wonders now, this Schengen zone was really quite a it was an amazing achievement when it was negotiated. Is it, in your view, falling apart now?
Yeah, I think Schengen is absolutely falling apart. I was in Europe a month ago and had my passport checked twice in the Schengen zone in one day. And I think that the only way we can see these national borders fall away again is if Europe does succeed in actually securing its external border. We have fewer refugees coming across the Aegean from Turkey to Greece now because of this deal, but we have more refugees coming in through Italy, for example. The EU can't strike a deal with a failed state like Libya to try to stop the flow there. So I think refugees will end up rerouting. There are other routes that are more treacherous but are still open. And as long as you've got refugees coming in, you don't have the external border secured. And so I think national borders will increasingly go up, particularly given the terrorist attacks that we've seen in Paris last November and more recently Brussels. Unfortunately, I think that that's something that's here to stay, and it's not actually necessarily connected to the refugee crisis. The terrorists in the Brussels attacks grew up in Belgium, for example. They're second-generation immigrants, but it doesn't matter. It's being connected in people's minds.
Janice.
Yeah, so I think there's no question that we're seeing, as you showed on the map, Steve, the reimposition of borders, which breaks down the Schengen Agreement, the capacity to travel freely without your passport. But I think it's also true that the Schengen zone is not critical to the survival of the European Union.
And it's not part of the European Union.
And it's really not part of the European Union. Wow. So it's perfectly conceivable to imagine that the Schengen, and you do it under suspension, that the Schengen zone is suspended for 4 or 5 years. It may take that long until something sort of quasi-stability returns to a ruined Syria and the pressure eases. But even if it goes, I still don't think that necessarily means the end of the Union. Why is that? Because that's about the mobility of people. If you're a European citizen, if you live in one of the participating countries, it's still going to be easy for you to go cross borders. Ideas are going to move, capital is going to move, technology is going to move. I think it's an exaggeration to say that just because people will face greater obstacles to moving, the whole European project is gone.
I hear you, but Jeffrey, as a symbol of how open and united Europe was, the end of Schengen would be quite symbolic, would it not?
It's not just symbolic. If you put I disagree with what Janice just said, because really the free movement of people is huge within Europe. And it's not just the free movement of people. You know, I lived in Toronto. Go across the border into New York State with a truck. The trucks are lined up for 20 miles long. If you want to actually have the reimposition of real borders in Europe, that's what you're going to have. It's about the free movement of people, the free movement of goods. These go to the very core of European integration. And also, the European leaders get this. Chancellor Merkel recently said that she's committed to reopening these borders as quickly as possible this summer. Now, I'm not sure she's going to be able to do it because, precisely because of what Megan said, as long as you have a lot of refugees, there is going to be kind of popular pressure to reimpose borders. But we shouldn't underestimate how important, and not only symbolically important, how economically important it is that you can get off a boat or a plane in Portugal and travel all the way to Poland without ever showing your passport.
Well, the funny thing about Schengen is that it's not necessary, as Janice says, but it's very popular.
That's
I mean,
right.
it's the aspect of European unification that European citizens actually like. They like the fact that you could drive from France into Germany basically without knowing that you've crossed the border. There's a tiny sign somewhere and that sort of thing. It's very popular. Suspensions like this were built into the structure of the Schengen Agreement 2 decades ago. And the idea that it could be suspended temporarily was part of it. They did it in 2011 in many countries due to the Arab Spring. I was shocked to go from Italy to France and have to show a passport. It's no big deal to have to do that. It is popular, so it will probably remain despite temporary suspensions. Remember, this is a refugee crisis. These happen from time to time in Europe. There was a big one in the 1990s that caused even bigger political tensions. This one will probably be bigger than that one somewhat, but these are periodic things every couple decades.
Megan, let's get you on this.
Yeah, I would just say, I mean, Schengen is the free movement of labor, capital, goods, and services. And so we've already seen input costs in Germany rise off the back of temporary border reimposition. Germany's supposed to be the growth engine of Europe, and its supply chain is well integrated through Central and Eastern Europe. So if you do see trucks lining up for 20 hours at the border, that's a huge headwind for the European economy. And let's not forget, Europe isn't exactly growing like gangbusters right now, even though the ECB has its pedal to the metal. You know, we might have growth of around 1.5% in Europe now when times are good. So that kind of headwind could be detrimental for Europe.
They run 4 of the most important universities in the country. They are all located in Ontario's capital city. Yes, they all compete for students, but you might be surprised to learn they frequently get together to improve the educational experiences of the more than 200,000 students, faculty, and staff they serve and employ. It's a virtual city within the city. And with that, we welcome Toronto's 4 university presidents, introduced in chronological order. Not them, but their institutions. Merrick Gertler is president of the University of Toronto, established in 1827. Sarah Diamond is president of OCAD University, established in 1876. Mohammed Lashami is president of Ryerson University, established in 1948. And Mamdouh Choukri, president of York University, established in 1959. Mr. and Madam Presidents, it's great to have you all here at TVO tonight. Thanks for coming. Great to be here. Let us start. We want to talk about a bunch of issues that you 4 are dealing with right now, but we want to start with transportation because you have all, I gather, worked together to conceive, fund, and effect the largest survey on transit and transportation probably in Canadian history. And to that end, Sheldon, if you would, that's not Sheldon Levy, your predecessor. This is Sheldon Osman, our director. Let's start with this. 15,000 complete responses you got to this university survey of students. You found out a third of students spend, imagine this, 2 hours or more per day traveling to and from campus. 25% of respondents live 20 kilometers or more from school. Let's start very generally with this. President Gertler, what's the point of collecting all this information?
Well, the point is we have between us about 180,000 students that we enroll at our various campuses. Many of them, in fact, most of them are commuters. And so we have a natural interest in ensuring that their daily experience is as good as it can possibly be.
We want them to spend more time on our campuses, interacting with their fellow students, their faculty members, and engaging in student life. The more time they have to spend every day getting to and from our campuses, the worse their experience is. So we collected this data as a way to help transportation planners make better transportation investments with our students in mind. Of course, it will also help our faculty and our staff if we can improve the transit system in the GTA.
President Diamond, if they're no doubt spending too much time in cars or on subways or on streetcars or in any number of different ways getting to your institutions, the implications of which are, I guess, a lot of people are choosing courses depending on what time they can get to school.
That's right. You want students to plan their academic career based on really what a rich curriculum will provide for them, rather than trying to bank their learning experience in 2 or 3 days in order to avoid having to deal with rush hour traffic, challenges with transit, or try and get to school later on in the day so they avoid rush hour. But I think it's important to talk about why we've chosen to work together on this, because we felt that if we could provide a kind of objective viewpoint on data, we would be very helpful to problem solving in a new kind of way. And we all have faculty who work in the area of either data analytics or visualization, and we're actually able to create a tool set for analysts, for
planners. What does that mean, a tool set?
Oh, give a planner of transportation systems something that's very visual, that shows the impact of the kind of transit gaps that we have in the GTA.
Gotcha.
Really make that very, very clear, very visual, and help them make more informed decisions.
President Lashmi, you as a university can't go out and spend $1 billion to build a new LRT or a new subway in order to make it easier for your students to get there on time. But what can you do to improve things?
I think the most important thing, and this is really the why we did this survey, is really to understand the behavior, how students are using the transit system, because I believe this is a first step for more collaboration between the 4 universities, really to address the issues that are faced by our students. And if we understand the transit behavior and how students are using the system, we can really work with the City of Toronto in enhancing services, but also look at alternatives, how we can support better students while they're on campus. In our case at Ryerson University, more than 80% of our students are commuters.
80%?
More than 80% of
Ryerson
our
students commute.
Exactly. So it's important for us also to provide them with the right support while they're here with us on campus, and also find other alternatives for them to minimize the time of transit. And definitely we don't have the funding for that, but I think it's important for us to address the issue, and I hope that with other projects we can work together to see what are the other solutions that we can provide to students.
President Shukri, I'm guessing that probably 80% of your students commute as well.
To a great extent, and I think, as you heard, it's wonderful because we have data, as you suggested. It's a large amount of data that will help create evidence to support decision making. It will support public policy development. There's another side to this too. Remember, we are also in the business of knowledge generation and knowledge dissemination. So this is a great opportunity for our students to be engaged in research, for our students and under the supervision of some of the best faculties in urban planning and all related fields, that they have data that they can mine and they can publish future papers. They can inform themselves, informs the city. The other thing about the collaboration is that it's also supported by other activities that has been going on. Our York City Institute yesterday was celebrating its 10th anniversary, and this is a whole research institute that's focused around city building and city planning. So they have their own data now, new set of data that will help complement what they have. So the output of this will continue to come as we go in the future, as more students come and look at the data, more researchers look at the data. And again, this is part of university's commitment to support public policy development.
Is it also the case, Michelle, that in smaller municipalities, you all know each other outside of council?
We know each other and we know everybody's business.
Right.
Everybody knows everybody and everything that they do. So that when one stands, you stand for election with your entire background before you. There's nothing hidden. In some ways, there's an advantage to that. I think it means that you can immediately, or pretty immediately, identify where your supports would lie. And in small communities, I think that there's a slight difference too. In large cities, people will get in a disagreement and it becomes, that's it, I'm going to pick up my marbles and go home, right? In small communities, you almost never do that, because I may pick up my marbles at the council table, but I'm going to meet you at the grocery store, I'm going to meet you at the restaurant, and I'm going to meet you at the laundromat. And so it's important that people have a way to get along to some degree. And so it's a very, very rare case where folks just absolutely stop communicating.
I need to find out here. How did you resolve things with the bullies?
I told them that I thought that they were bullies.
How'd they take that?
Not very well to begin with, but we're still going through it, and now at least that there is a give and take. It's not just a one-sided thing. If you're going to come into council chambers and say to us how wrong everything is and that I, as a new council member, should know better, then educate me, then work with me, give me the history for it. And that went a lot to resolve it. Yeah, I can't say they're all on my side yet, but I feel better at least the back and forth. I don't like to be ignored.
Are you for all, for lack of a better word here, oops, I'm going to get in trouble here.
Go ahead.
Women of substance.
That's not the expression I was going for, but I'm sure you are.
Give you a good one.
No, I appreciate the help, but that's not what I was going for, actually. You know, when one listens to what it is that you actually do, you know, a lot of hours for not very much pay on sometimes very arcane issues that really is deep in the weeds and heavy duty into municipal planning and plumbing. And are you all a bit weird to spend so much of your lives doing this work? You don't think so?
No. I was going to say earlier, I think that even though there may be small numbers of women on municipal council, the women that are on municipal council don't just do that. They serve on other levels with AMO or OSUM or Roma. They get involved. They don't just sort of get involved, they go in 100% and give 100% as they do in their own lives. And that's part of the nature of, I think, attracting us to municipal council. We've worked in our school groups and our community groups and our church groups, and we see that there's benefit in extending that sort of volunteer service to our municipality. I think we're volunteers in the truest sense. It's 100% in us. We eat it, sleep it, live it, breathe it. And maybe we are weird. I know I have friends that would say, I would never do it. And maybe that's the nature of, maybe there aren't that many women that are that driven, but the ones that are really driven to do it.
But that's my point, Liz. I mean, on nights when, for example, your friends might be going to visit their kids and play with their grandkids on a weeknight, or just kick back with a beer and watch the Blue Jay game on the weekend, you're going to committee meetings. That's going to be a bit of a weird choice of priorities for some people.
I'll try and limit this to one topic, but I think we probably all can find ways to connect with issues that are deeply passionate for us. And for me, it's about the renaissance of rural Ontario. I absolutely think that the whole change of the world of work, broadband in rural areas, trying to find out how to have a sustainable economy and a sustainable treatment of the earth out in small places. You know, we're going to get Glenn Murray out to our part of the world this summer.
The Environment Minister.
Absolutely, the Environment Minister and the Climate Change Minister, and show him what we're doing in terms of adaptations in small places. You know, I have people who commute from Toronto to Toronto and live where we live because we offer an unbelievable quality of life. I do work with people in Iqaluit. I mean, broadband, the Uberization of work, what the sharing economy can offer in terms of transportation and housing in rural areas. I mean, it's an exciting place.
You have people commuting 2.5 hours daily?
No, not daily, but more and more he'll be out. You know, that job is more and more hours of the week he can now do it from our neck of the woods on the Rideau. You can buy a house for under $100,000 and live in one of the most beautiful parts of the province. You know, why not?
Amen.
Yeah.
I also think that probably a lot of us do it, and I don't know what the family relationships are with us sitting around the table, but this is a way that we're teaching our children how to take responsibility too. Now, my New Year's resolution has been for the past 4 or 5 years to make sure that I see my grandchildren at least once a week. Doesn't always happen, but and they live right in the same municipality I do. But I think that we probably as women, and I hate to get this gender specific, but we probably do display our love for and our passion for and our interest in what's going on. And we probably give that hopefully to our children for the next generation coming up.
Michelle, last word to you on this.
I think women are passionate creatures. I think that we give to the community, and I think we are creating amazing role models. I just would hope that the four of us here, with our own passion and our own desire, and we said so much in the green room, truly how much we loved what we're doing, that other women out there hear that and join us, because I am the only woman in my council chambers.
And that needs to change.
And that I want to change, yes.
Let's talk about the drumbeat of war. He was one of the most outspoken political reporters at the time, war correspondents at the time. Well, it's not quite war yet, but war is coming. A series he did on Germany and the increasing bellicosity of Hitler's Germany. What reaction did he get to those pieces?
Well, that was one of my great surprises in writing the book. I thought he would be acclaimed as prophetic and so on, writing these books sounding the alarm about Hitler and Nazi Germany. But in fact, he was widely attacked in Canada at the time as being a warmonger and as a sensationalist. The Roman Catholic Archbishop of Toronto had advised his readers not to buy the Toronto Star, where he was being published. And in fact, at that time, and again, it was something of a revelation to me, Hitler was acclaimed by a lot of people in Canada. The Globe and the Montreal Gazette wrote a series saying that Hitler was a great force for stability in Germany. They said that these stories of persecution of Jews and dissidents were, quote unquote, imaginative lies. And so my father was to some degree a lone voice at the Star, along with the Winnipeg Free Press, which was the other newspaper which was very anti-Hitler. But they were very much lone voices, and even someone like Walter Lippmann, this famous American journalist, wrote a column that I read saying that Hitler was a force for peace and stability in Germany.
The Canadian socialist Frank Underhill said, "European troubles are not worth the bones of a Toronto grenadier." How frustrating was that attitude to your dad?
I think it was very much frustrating because he was a huge supporter of the League of Nations and wanted the League of Nations to use its limited sanctions to put pressure on both Mussolini's Italy and Hitler's Germany not to expand, not to pursue their aggressive ambitions. But of course it didn't work, and we had Mackenzie King as the Prime Minister then, who again, somewhat of a surprising discovery for me. I'd always thought of him as following Neville Chamberlain in Britain and his appeasement policy, but King was very much in the vanguard of the appeasement movement. He went to see Hitler, found Hitler deeply impressive, as he shows in his diaries. All this was quite shocking to me. He describes Neville Chamberlain after the Munich Agreement. We think of Munich as a synonym for a sellout to tyranny. But at the time, Munich was hailed by most people as a great event.
Peace in our time.
Peace in our time. And King describes Neville Chamberlain as one of the greatest statesmen he's ever met. And a year later, he describes another man, you can guess, Winston Churchill, as one of the most dangerous politicians.
And a big bore, too. They had a terrible first meeting. Did your dad ever have it out with Mackenzie King and try and set him straight?
I don't think he met him after the war, and they may have had a conversation, but I don't think that he actually upbraided him in public.
You know, everybody who's ever covered Hitler, you know, as a news story, who was there and would have seen him, you know, always has that moment where they ask themselves, if I could have killed him, should I have and spared the world from? Did your dad, do you know, have a moment like that?
He did on a number of occasions, especially during the 1936 Olympics in Berlin, where the press stand was just behind where Hitler and a number of leading Nazis were sitting. And he'd often reflect afterwards that if he had the courage to throw a hand grenade in the right place, he could have saved the world vast agony. So he had that reflection on a number of occasions.
It's a bit cheeky of me to ask the son to read something that the father broadcast, but he's not here and you are, so I am going to ask you. This is a dispatch that your father broadcast at 5 in the morning on the 4th of July, 1940 in France. And I wonder if I could prevail upon you to read it.
This was at the Battle of Carpiquet, where he was told in advance that he should go up to the front, be with the frontline troops to witness this, the Canadian troops advancing from the front line. And he writes, and now 25 minutes have passed. 25 minutes of the most, I think the most ferocious barrage I've ever seen. All we can see is smoke and the terrible bursts of flame as one of the huge naval shells falls on the enemy position. Occasionally an enemy shell falls near us, and you can hear, as I speak, you can hear the chattering, the hard stuttering of the machine guns. And he goes off to sign off. This is Matthew Holton of the CBC speaking from France.
I got chills listening to that. And that is the Agenda's Week in Review. You can see all of those programs in their entirety. They're on our website at tvo.org, on our iTunes channel, and on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/theagenda.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit supporttvo.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.